In this stream, we're going to work on finishing up version 2 of our rear suspension. In our previous suspension video, we produced a product that really just didn't make sense for our design, and it did not conform to the quality of the basic build that we wanted. It also had some other issues with alignment and working kind of within the bounds of what the expected wheel is going to be. So I decided to restart, change the design up a little bit, and work within some of those new considerations. So if you follow along, we'll get right into it. Hello and welcome back to the J37 tube chassis live stream. We're going to continue working on the rear suspension today. I originally was going to do this off stream, but after doing some research, I realized that there's a much better method with this, and I wanted to capture it on camera and get it up on stream. So I'm going to basically be deleting and restarting all of this, and then using something that's much more similar to this for the front end. So the front end will be a little bit different than we had originally planned. I won't be able to manufacture potentially as many matching pieces. This lower one may be the same on front and back, but basically after reviewing some GT1 tube chassis builds, I realized that I can actually build in some caster pretty easily and get toe adjustment pretty well dialed in using some techniques that the GT1 cars had. So I need to first go through, basically delete all of this, retain the positions, correct them for that center line, assuming that we're using a zero offset wheel. Some of this could change. There is some benefits to using a wheel where the inside comes in further in terms of scrub radius, but I think that's more for the front. So for now, we're just going to kind of stick with some zero offset wheels and know that this is pretty much infinitely adjustable because it fully decouples from the chassis without too much effort, and I can just weld in new parts. And I expect actually that I should be able to retain that hub. It's kind of new for me, and I've known I've needed to update it, but I haven't really done it yet, is starting to work in different projects and then combining those projects together. So I have my master file, which is what I'm working on here, and I use it for all my references, kind of making sure things connect, putting the final parts in, that kind of stuff. But when I work on things like these suspension components that you're going to watch today, I'm actually going to build that in a different design file. And that just allows kind of simplicity. You don't have to worry about interacting with other stuff, potentially deleting something. So this is something that I'm going to start working on and trying to get better about doing throughout the project. So it's kind of confusing at first with Fusion 360 about how you copy or bring stuff over, and I'm definitely still learning. But one of the things that I found is you can basically just drag any saved file directly into another one, and then it'll import everything. And if it's a final project, especially, you can just delete all the sketches and information that's not relevant. And that really helps keep that final project both nested, so each section or module or system is contained within its own file, but also it lets you kind of delete stuff without them interacting potentially with something else. build, you may have noticed that I was really struggling with getting all these items to align, and I was really kind of just doing it close enough with a lot of these builds, which I wasn't super happy about. I know that's not the quality that I need to ultimately be able to machine a lot of this stuff, but I didn't want to get too hung up while I was streaming and worry about it. And so I was kind of just getting close and trying not to get too frustrated with it. However, here you'll notice that I'm starting a new technique, and that's using or creating vertices and axes. I think it's actually an axis, or an axis. And man, that really helps. You can align items. It doesn't shift other parts around in the design. So you'll see here, I just create an axis through 2 points, and also then select that blue line and have the part aligned to it. It works every time, especially with these McMaster Carr imported parts, and it really helped bring the quality of that these parts up. So I would highly recommend doing this in the future. Some of this is roughing it in the beginning, but what this really allows at the end of the day is to have a lot less cleanup work. So we're producing higher quality, more accurate parts without having to kind of worry or make adjustments or guesstimations later on. So one of the things that I tend to do when I get excited is I kind of continue down the rabbit hole. So objectively, what I'm supposed to be doing right now is producing all of the axes that are critical for producing the parts. And once I have those, then going back and producing the parts. So I'm really, in terms of order of operations, not too far off the mark. But you may notice that I start to produce stuff kind of ahead of schedule, and ultimately it may need some changes. So I got kind of excited that this was looking really nice. I got really excited about those axes, and I was kind of feeling in the groove. So I started to produce the wheel hub. Now this may not be the final design. I'm still working with the idea of using some billet aluminum. Certainly from a machining standpoint, it would be easier. But these last couple of videos, or minutes of this video rather, that's really what I'm working on here, is thinking about how can I, using my simple home machining setup, produce something that has the capability to withstand the forces exerted on it by this car, as well as have tolerances and clearances that are not annoying or have interference. One of the things that really drives me up the wall about a lot of OEM cars is they tend to have a lot of interference parts, or parts that are very difficult to get to, or bolts and hardware that's very difficult to get to. And I tend to replace OEM parts with aftermarket parts as long as they retain the same quality, for that reason, is that I can just service them much easier in the future. So I'm trying to take some of that and implement it here ahead of time. So you'll see as I kind of move through the end of this that I start to produce what I want the ultimate shape to look like, and then I start realizing that dropping in bolts for this would actually have some interference, and so I start doing order of operations. And this is really where I start getting ahead of myself. It's not bad to be thinking about this. I think that good design does need some of this in the very beginning, but I don't want to go down to the nth level and feel like I have a finished part, when the reality is that there's probably more iteration that will need to happen here. Even after reviewing this video, I realized that upper control arm, I want to flip 180 degrees to get the geometry that I was originally looking for with my suspension arm, which is partially aesthetic, but should not reduce the effectiveness of it. So we'll look into the suspension arm a little bit more on the next video. Here in the last couple seconds of this video, you see that I start to push forward into the vertical, or the suspension rod, I guess, the rod that ultimately connects to the rocker and the strut spring assembly. I kind of get ahead of myself here. I was kind of, again, just excited and starting to realize clearances and looking at machinable or buildable parts. So this is really going to get saved for next time. I stopped here, but this is hopefully what it's going to start to look like. I do want to flip the upper A-arm over and then start working on the suspension rod to the front of it. So thanks for watching, and I will be back on Sundays, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitch. Links and information in the comments below.